Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1999 made-for-television science fiction thriller, Alien Cargo. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to a longtime friend and subscriber of mine named Will for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Alien Cargo is I believe it's actually an Australian production from what I have been researching, and it was released through Paramount. And I don't know if it was a direct to video or it was a direct to cable. I'm thinking it was more of like a direct to cable movie, and then it wound up on video. Um, it's definitely a film that isn't available technically on streaming. It doesn't have a DVD or Blu-ray release. I don't think it ever will, because there's really not enough of a demand for it. I mean, I'm probably one of the only people that is reviewing this movie on YouTube, if not the only guy. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the only review of this movie on this platform. Um, the movie is directed by Mark Haber, and this is a guy who did a lot of TV stuff. I don't even think he ever directed a single theatrical feature, and you could definitely tell that this is a director who has some pretty significant limitations in terms of his framing, in terms of his selection of shots. There's a couple sequences that look all right visually, but a lot of it definitely looks cheap. It definitely does look low rent. And the way that certain scenes are framed really does not help the film's attempts to be suspenseful or full of tension. And also it just has this very flat look to it, and it just looks every bit the part of a TV movie or a direct to video film. Like, it just doesn't really have anything about it direction wise that really makes it stand out from a slew of other films that were made for cable or came out direct to video that deal with outer space and some kind of threat inside a space station of sorts. It doesn't help either that there's a lot of shots in this that featured incredibly dated CGI effects of the spaceships, and that really makes things look even more flat and lifeless because you just have this really bad looking CGI that looks like something out of a crappy video game for the PC from around this particular time period when this film was released. I don't think he really got the best and most consistent performances out of his cast either. You got some decently talented performers here, like Missy Crider and Jason London, but there's a fair amount of scenes in this film where the line delivery, especially when these characters are supposed to be, I guess, scary because of the fact that they're infected with some kind of virus and it's causing them to be hyper aggressive and focused on trying to kill each other. But the way that the performances are presented on screen, it's very unauthentic and forced and try hard and laughable. And a better director would have taken them aside and been like, "Hey, can we do another take on that? Because I didn't believe that at all. That was not believable." Um, but I would say when it comes to, I guess, maybe some of the shots involving zero gravity, those were shot in a way that was pretty decent. Some of the interior shots of the spacecraft, um, but a lot of the movie is just very just bland visually. It's It's a very bland, dull looking film. And honestly, a lot of that lies at the feet of the director, Mark Haber. The script by Carla Jean Wagner, who also wrote the screenplay for another mystery movie that takes place in space, which I think is called Murder in Moonlight or On the Moonlight or something like that, with Julian Sands. This script is very paint by numbers, very chock full of cliches. There and a ton of padding. Like there's barely enough of a plot here for a 20-minute installment of some kind of sci-fi anthology show, let alone an hour and a half of material. You have this crew, this group of miners who work for this company that likes to cut corners and works them to the bone. And there's some interesting ideas that are brought up here about how these corporations are using and abusing these workers by having them really not work for that long at all. They get paid for mostly being in hypersleep. So they would be in hypersleep for like 8 hours or most of the trip, and then only two of the workers would actually do any real work. The rest of the time, they're just getting paid to sleep, which sounds like a good gig, but at the same time, it just also sounds like something that just is just completely just bleeding away your time and just completely messing up your idea of what a year or what a month or even what a day is. And I think the writer really could have expanded upon that more and how that weighs upon these crew members and how that affects them. And especially uh, how it leads to other complications. Because of all this hypersleep, they are not aging normally. So now they could potentially look not potentially. Now they do look. They look like they're a certain age, but in reality, they're not. So that's got to be something that messes with them psychologically. And I think that could have been an interesting direction to take things in terms of the drama with these characters. But the script never really bothers to really go and delve into any of that. Like you have most of the focus is just on the two leads, which is somewhat understandable. We could have those conversations with those two a little bit more than what you got, which is just very surface level stuff. So you could have conversations with Chris and Theta about how this affects their relationship with one another, or how it affects uh, uh, how other people might perceive them, or their own views of themselves and their place in this world in terms of being these just out of time individuals who are just sleeping the days away, and they're not showing the years on their skin, but they feel it in different ways. But no, they just established these two as two lovers, and that's really about as far as things go. The rest of the crew feels completely immaterial because you don't really get to know a whole lot about them except just very minor details. And for most of the movie, the other crew members are just asleep in hyper pods anyway, so it's not like they really have much of a presence in the film script. There's a couple characters that you think might have a little bit more going for them because the movie opens up with the two fighting each other and then one of them getting shot out an airlock. But no, you don't really get a lot more with these two characters that open up the movie. And that exposes another issue with this script, which is it has no real sense of mystery or intrigue especially for the majority of the running time, because of the fact that it gives away the mystery in the opening sequence. I don't understand. I really do not understand this decision by the writer. Like, why the hell would you open up a movie that is supposed to be about paranoia and this alien cargo that causes the crew to try to kill one another, and it gives it away early on where you see that, oh, there's something causing them to go crazy, and you see exactly what happens to this one character. And later on in the movie, it's not like there's any extra mystery or intrigue added to that sequence. They just find the guy's dead body and drag him back into the ship. I'm like, I guess the only reason why that's set up there is because they get exposed to the virus from the guy's dead body. I'm like, okay, there's a better way to do it. You don't have to give away everything from the first frame. Now you know that once they get exposed, once they start acting strange or start showing redness under their eyes, they're going to start trying to kill each other and act uh completely unorthodox or different than what they were acting before. And it's not shocking, it's not surprising, and it's not really anything that is really that tense because you just expect it to happen. And here's the thing, like, even if that was the case, you could show like an extra progression of the virus other than maybe some blue blood coming out of a nose. Like, show them mutate some more in some way, go a little bit more farther with it in some sort of body horror direction where they become more alien. But no, that's not what happens here. So all they just look the same, but they just look tired and sweaty, and they act all pissed off and angry at each other like they're um, having a really bad bout of road rage. It's just like, okay, all right, whatever. Like, I don't. It just makes the hook of the film just feel so immaterial to me from the way that the movie starts things in terms of the narrative. And that's something that the screenwriter is to blame for. The screenwriter's to blame for the characterization and the lack thereof, and the fact that these characters just feel very paper thin, and there's really not much to them, and there's not much to really like or even hate. And it's one of those things where it really affects the pacing because you're like, okay, once the virus kicks in and Chris and Theta start stalking each other, you're kind of like, so what? Who cares? Who cares whether they live or die? Because I don't. And then you have the whole stuff with the rescue mission, because that's the other thing. It's like, oh, are they going to be rescued? Is this science vessel going to be able to do the impossible and save them and the sleepers before time runs out? And it's like, you know what? I just feel like this story is wasting my time anyway because of just how lackadaisical it is and lazy the storytelling is, that it just doesn't really provide much tension. You're not on the edge of your seat waiting to see what's going to happen next. There's not as much of an investment in the plot, let alone the characters. And even the twists are just more cliches, more stuff you've seen a million times in a million other science fiction films. Oh, the machine that emits this glow that causes people to be infected with this virus. It's actually made by us. It was made by NASA. It's this old probe. I'm like, what? Is it Voyager? Is it the Voyager probe? Like, what? It's this old probe that was made by NASA. And was it sent to an alien civilization as an attack? or did they send it to us in retaliation? I don't give a fuck. I don't care because the script is not really that good. So I will give it this. It's not afraid to be a little ballsy with the ending, which I do give it credit for because you easily could have played it safe here and had Chris and Theta find some cure and they make it out alive along with the sleepers. But that's not what happens. They thought they found a cure where they could keep the virus contained with cold and with panicide, which is their version of um, God, penicillin, or an antibiotic, or a vaccine, and it doesn't do anything. It's just temporary because the virus then comes back, and the only way they can contain it is really through keeping their body temperature very low. And you can only do that for so long. And there's also stuff where it insinuates that the ship's computer can't even recognize them because their DNA has changed so much because of the virus. And they've just become assigned to their fate. And that's how they discovered the origins of the probe, because they broke into it because they knew they had nothing to lose. And they decided to set the spaceship to a course for the sun. And that's the end of the movie. The end of the movie is these two characters, the ones we followed for a majority of the movie, after Chris piloted the sleeper pods miraculously into the science vessel to save the sleepers. He and Theta just drift to the sun, to their doom, while their ship is displaying the biohazard signal, which is essentially telling anyone who might come to the ship, if they don't make it to the sun, to not try to save them, not try to enter the ship because it's a biohazard. I was like, okay, all right, it went there. It didn't have the typical happy ending. It didn't have the sequel bait ending either, which I was kind of expecting, where they said that the sleepers were not infected, but in reality they were. And they're heading to Earth, and Earth is now doomed because the virus is going to spread and it's going to kill everybody. Like, no, it wasn't that bleak, but it was still, pretty bleak for this kind of movie, this kind of story, and definitely not something you might expect right off the bat. And I do think that there's some potential here with having two characters deal with a fear of some unknown virus and a fear of themselves, and having to hide in the various different corridors and crannies and spaces inside the ship and outthink the other one to try to survive. I think there's some potential for some really effective suspense there, but the script just drops the ball. It doesn't do a good job at all building that suspense, because honestly, Theta and Chris don't get affected until like, what is it, like 40 or 50 minutes into the movie, and it's only like an hour and a half, and they don't really stay infected for that long in terms of them being murderous and trying to take each other out. That's maybe 10 minutes, because then they find what they think is a cure, and then they start the rescue mission up again. And so it really felt like a waste there. And like I was saying earlier, like, it's just boring because they don't change. They just act angry and pissy at one another and try to kill each other. That's about it. There's no changes to their skin or their eyes or anything, even though it says that their DNA has changed. Maybe that's a budget thing, but I don't buy that, because you can do makeup and stuff like that with lower budgets. I've seen this done time and time again with Roger Corman Productions that probably had a budget around the same as this. Um, yeah, there's more you could do with the workplace politics, with the company, and what's going on with that. I think the idea that they went so far off course that they are like a year ahead and just completely away from most of civilization and just left for dead. I think that's definitely something that has potential too. I mean, especially if it's just some sudden thing, like you think you're going into hypersleep, and then the next moment you wake up out of hypersleep and you're so far off course that you need a hope and a prayer to survive, to get off the ship. And if that isn't bad enough, like over a year has passed, and pretty much everyone involved in the company probably assumes that you're dead. And if they don't, if you try to come back, you'll be known as the people who like failed the company because they had to wind up dropping the payload at some point, uh, so they could rescue the sleepers and send them to the other ship. So they can't really go back to their job. So there's definitely some stuff there. There's some intriguing elements. There's some potential, but it just isn't fully realized. And I don't know if it was the fact that the writer wasn't really the right choice, or the writer wasn't given a lot of time to really work and hone on this story and this script, and this is just a quick little paycheck thing. I don't know what it is, but honestly, if this is the end result that you're able to provide, it's not much, and it just feels like it really is a waste. It's space junk. It's fitting that a good core part of this film's plot is about finding this space junk that is full of this alien virus, because this script is junk. It's the equivalent of space trash and just as easily disposable. The performances, or the cast in general, I mean, I've seen better performances, but I've also seen worse. I mean, Jason London and Missy Crider, the script is not very good, so it's not like they're given a lot to work with, but they had some decent chemistry, and I think the two have enough charisma to make the film somewhat watchable at times, but not enough to save the movie or carry it. It's one of those things where these actors, they just feel like they're the type of actors that you would cast to be a part of an ensemble, but not really the lead. That's really the vibe that I get from Jason London and Missy Crider. Simon Westaway is Abera, and what is it? Yeah, Elizabeth Alexander is Rogine Page, the from the Dolphin, the research vessel. Alan Dale is Eichhorn. Um, uh, Once again, just kind of there in terms of the performances. You also have like Warwick Young, who plays Omer, Janowitz, and David Ross Patterson is Warren Scheidel, Kevin Copeland is Hunt Ballard, Diana Glenn as Leilani Griffin, Teresa Wong as Yvonne Hagen. I want to mention her just because she wasn't in the film a lot, but she had some scenes where I thought she had a certain bit of charm to her that I would have liked to have seen more of through the film. Um, but she spends most of the movie just asleep in a pod, like so much of the other supporting cast. But yeah, it's a very average at best cast. I mean, definitely not what I would consider amazing or top flight or terrific. Feel the same way about other aspects of the production, like the cinematography or the editing. I think the score by Patrick Hearn is arguably one of the more consistently solid things about the movie. I think it's a pretty good atmospheric, creepy, eerie little score. Patrick O'Hearn, he's done a lot of stuff. He's worked on a lot of different projects. He's even worked on his own music. Yeah, he did the score for White Sands, a film that starred Mickey Rourke. I think that was Mickey Rourke who was in White Sands. No, it was Willem Dafoe. Mickey Rourke was in it too. So Willem Dafoe was the lead in that, but it was also a Willem Dafoe movie. He also scored Crying Freeman with Mark Dacascos. I'm looking up his IMDb because he really has done a lot of stuff. Um, they did White Sands, did music for the show Falcon Crest. Oh yeah, he did the score for Destroyer, the film with Lyle Azado. Yeah, that's what I remember him from. Is he did the score for Destroyer? I thought he did a decent job with that score too, to be honest. And I want to shout out the production designer for this, the art direction, because even though this is a very low budget film, I think the design of the interior of the ship actually is well done, and it's authentic enough that it does add a certain extra level of respectability to this movie. I still think the film is incredibly dull and forgettable and boring for the most part, but I do want to give the production designer and the art director a lot of credit for still managing to bring a certain higher level to the film in some capacity. Also, the costume design wasn't that bad, like the look of the spacesuits and everything. But other visual effects are really rough, like the CGI and the rotoscoping at times. And there was also some moments where you could really tell that they just, for instance, put a string around a dummy and just pulled it and had it fly in front of the camera. And what was honestly a pretty just ridiculous sequence where this desiccated corpse just gets flung towards the camera, and I mean, it's so obviously just a dummy on a string. It's honestly, it was honestly kind of unbelievable. Uh, and the zero gravity stuff, I would have liked to see more zero gravity stuff, because that's honestly where I got the most potential thrills out of this movie, was the scenes with zero gravity. I think they really could have expanded upon that more, because they did a good job. They did a good job showcasing zero gravity despite the low budget as well. But that's another term that actually fits this film. It feels like the whole movie has zero gravity to it, because you're like, okay, it's either predictable, or when it's not, it's so bleak in a way that it's like, well, if you like these two characters that you spend most of the film with, they die, they're doomed at the end of the movie, and they're still infected, so you really don't get much satisfaction, to say the least, with this movie as a whole. And if you're looking for it for horror or suspense or intrigue, you're not getting really a lot of that either. And yeah, it is a story that would have been maybe in a decent or above average episode of some sci-fi anthology on like the Sci-Fi Channel, but not a feature length film. And as a feature length film, it's slog to sit through. It's slow. It's dull. And it's boring. And there's a reason why this movie is mostly forgotten about. and left to rot in the outer reaches of space. But anyway, that's my thoughts on alien cargo. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.